Again, thank you all for taking your time to join us today as part of the culmination of our series, Women of Color on the Front Lines, which has happened month of March, which is Women's History Month. And we set aside this time to honor women of color that are doing the work on the front lines. And I'm just so happy that we're able to come together and have this discussion. We have some amazing women that are with us today. I hope that you're able to receive this time where I know you only have, only an hour, but you really get to take a minute, take a beat, take a break from what's to come and really engage with this conversation. And so we are not shy about engaging in the chat. So please feel free to ask questions, to share information. There will be different questions and promptings and things that we will be putting up throughout our time together to help with the discussion. So please don't be shy. Again, if you see a colleague of yours, please say hello. Jump in their inbox, start a dialogue. But I want to go ahead and just jump right into it. Women of Color on the Front Lines, again, is a series that we are going to be doing annually to highlight the women of color that are doing the work in the communities. We have some awesome women, and I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves. So Rosie, would you start?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Welcome and welcome, friends. I see I have a lot of friends and associates on, so thank you for coming. I am Rosie Grant, and I am the Executive Director of Paterson Education Fund.
Good afternoon. My name is Munirah El-Bomani. I am born and raised in Paterson, New Jersey, now a native of Newark, New Jersey. My organization is First Women Build 2 Education and Trades Foundation. Also, I'm the founder and CEO of Freed Women Empowerment Network. Also, the New Jersey coordinator for the original Million Women's March that was held in Philly, 1997.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer Made. I do many different things, but in this capacity right now, I am here as the founder of NORCAN, which is short for Newark Community Action Network. Nice to see and meet everyone.
And I will finish it off. My name is Dr. Bambie Hayes-Brown, and I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of Georgia Advancing Communities Together, a statewide affordable housing and community development membership organization, and also president of Alliance 85, which is an alliance of 85 rural South Georgia counties advocating for Black economics. I was born and raised in a small town called Cordele, Georgia, that's located in Southwest Georgia, and currently reside in Metro Atlanta, and glad to see so many of my friends and associates here. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. All right, so we are going to go ahead and dive in right into their stories. So I'd like to know from you all that are joining us this afternoon, what is it that you do and why are you doing what you're doing? And we'll start with you, Dr. Bambie.
Well, in short, what I do is comfort the disturbed and to disturb the comfortable. So I am a community advocate. I do a lot of work in Georgia. Georgia, people think of Atlanta as Georgia, but there are 159 counties in Georgia. But we advocate for affordable housing and equitable community development. I am also a person with lived experience of housing insecurity. So I'm formerly homeless, and I had my youngest son, he was born into homelessness. I'm a former public housing resident and currently a person living with a disability. So in short, I go around and stir up some good trouble because so many of our people, especially Black and brown people, people in rural communities like where I was born, as well as urban communities, are traditionally marginalized, live in disinvested communities. And so we are here to change the tide, also by empowering people on the ground that's doing the on the ground work, but also advocating with local, state, and federal elected officials, and letting them know that they're going to hear from more than just lobbyists. They're going to hear from the people that are impacted by their legislation and the work they do, and also they're going to be held accountable. So that's in short what I do.
All right, Dr. Bambie, I feel like we should snap after that. All right, Rosie.
My work mostly is at Paterson Education Fund, and we are a community-based organization. Our work is to engage the community in the improvement of Paterson Public Schools. I stand on the edge of advocacy and activism because there's an activist inside me that comes out every so often. However, we are focused on advocacy, systemic change that benefits generations to come. And our work is for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and poor children in Paterson and through some national coalitions across the country. And my work in this field started before I realized it was starting. And just a short story, I migrated to the United States when I was 18, went to a 2-year college where I was the only person of color that I can remember there. I was certainly the only Black person, and was valedictorian. And they called me into the office shortly before graduation and told me that I was valedictorian. They thought it was going to be somebody else. And so they had asked Chris if he would be salutatorian because I beat him out by a few points. So while I was valedictorian, I was not able to address the audience at graduation. And then later found out that it was because of my accent, and they didn't think that people would relate to me and they would relate to Chris a lot better. I was a different person back then. I didn't fight it, I accepted it. I realized that I should have fought it. And so I keep fighting now for the underprivileged. So in my work, I do a lot of teaching around restorative practices, and I am bolder than I have ever been as I age.
Thank you, Rosie. Munirah?
On. I got to make sure to keep. So my struggles came from it. My struggles and experiences came from growing up in Paterson, now Newark, you know, in a single parent household, 6 siblings, you know, who are impoverished and deprived of opportunities towards adequate education, resources, and economic stability to advance in my community. So I've made some bad choices. In 1994, returned home from out of incarceration, decided after reading books like, you know, the Black Panther Party, Assad Shakur, Harriet Tubman, law books, and et cetera, you know, I came home a changed person. So, you know, I focused on, you know, being affected, you know, growing up, you know, my mother struggled, seeing women inside, behind the walls, struggling, women, the fastest growing population going to prison, also the highest eviction rates, you know, also, you know, a lot of different, you know, struggles of women of African descent. So, you know, I developed, you know, my own organization out of that called Free Women Empowerment Network, which I have a cable channel. And then also I picked up some skills after coming home, a high school dropout, now a college graduate with 2 degrees in sociology. I decided to start, you know, my own organizations, you know, I'm not very much, you know, receiving government grants. So I just started it on my own. So that's where my struggles came from. So I'm here to reach back and give back, you know, to women who are struggling of African descent.
Thank you, Munirah. Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. And the question, just one more time, is what do we do?
What do you do?
Okay.
And what led you to this work?
Oh God. Okay. So, well, what I do is Newark CAN, which is Newark Community Action Network, and we are a network of young community organizers and Brick City residents building resources and power in our community. I'm from Newark, born and raised. Fun fact, I literally was born in the West Ward. Well, we lived in the West Ward when I was born. I was born in the Ironbound, ironically. I was born in a hospital that used to be called St. James in '96. Then we moved to the North Ward, which I lived for a very long time in my childhood. I went to high school in the South Ward. I went to the best school in Newark, University High School. And then I went to college in the Central Ward. I went to Rutgers, and I currently still live in the Central Ward. So I've been in all places in the city of Newark, and I just love it here. So how I started this work and how I was able to uh, build Newark CAN, I didn't really realize it, but I really started it when I was younger, and it really was incorporated in 2019. But 2 years prior, I was coming from a concert, and I saw a woman who needed food. She didn't ask for money, which was to me rare in Penn Station. She asked for food. McDonald's is changing shifts. It was really, really late, and it was during a time where the path wasn't necessarily running all night long like it does now. It shut down at 2 something and went back at 4, like 40. And I talked to her for a little bit, and we weren't able to get her any food at that time, but I did tell her that I would come back the next day around noon with some food. I went, cooked food, brought some down, never saw her again. But after that, I've been providing a warm home cooked meal to the population without addresses. In April, it'll be 7 years. We have grown from it just being me to it being my family helping, from me making 5 to 7 meals on Sundays to now making 100 to 175 meals on Sundays, to just giving out meals, to now giving out resources to our population without addresses. We do toiletries, socks, coats, hats. We do groceries. We do anything that you could possibly think of. We have done haircuts. We have done cookout styles where they feel like when it's the summertime, we'll bring out a speaker, we'll cook hamburgers, so different seasons bring different things for them so that they feel dignified. They feel like a sense of someone actually understands them. And we connect well with them. We bring resources down there. We have had the city come down and fill out some applications so some of them can get their social security cards. We partner with United Health so that they can come down and some of them they need to be looked after. And we have done a lot of STD and STI testing down there, as well as COVID testing. So we have done a plethora of things in April, 7 years to come. And we have an amazing team of 15 to 20 people that are ranging between 16 years old till about 33 who come out on Sundays and volunteer.
Thank you. You all are doing amazing, but we all, as women, we tend to do amazing things. And we tend to not necessarily share our story. We just did a poll, and majority of the folks, the consensus was, don't really take the opportunity to share their story. And I wonder, why that is, because through stories, we're able to establish connection and we're able to breed understanding. So I'd like to know from you all, why do you think that, you yourself or others don't have an opportunity or have not shared their story? And why even do this work? Why do it?
So
I Okay, go ahead.
So I do this work, because, growing up in a single parent household, seeing my mother struggle, seeing how women are struggling behind bars, the fastest growing population going to prison for victimless crimes, the highest eviction rate, women, mothers in crisis, mothers in prison, children and families will remain in crisis because women today are the breadwinners of the home. So when you take women and lock them up for victimless crimes, petty crimes, that's why we're going to have a crisis because women are the fastest growing population. So why I do this is because of, my struggles, the experiences, that's what keeps me going, you know. It's my duty, it's my duty to, continue the legacy of our freedom fighters, like I said, that I keep around and about me. You see my poster. I have to stay committed, consistent, because the struggle is still here and it's still real. So that's why I wake up every day. My feet hit the ground. Is doing what I can to make, my life and my community a better place to live in.
How did you get comfortable sharing your story? The way that you've come to what you do today is not typical. You know what I mean? So what gave you the courage, or what gives you the courage to share your story with others?
So what gives me the courage is because, the strength, the tenacity, that I have. I'm a bull, I'm a Taurus. And we just, I know I don't want to just blame it on my zodiac sign, but we productive, we steadfast, we keep going, and then, seeing my mother struggle and get up every time throughout her struggles, and women, that was in my, in my family and in my community. I came from growing up in the projects where, living in the project wasn't a bad thing. We shared our resources, everybody was everybody's family, we fed each other, we just keep it going, and then as women, we tenacity, we have the tenacity, in spite of the odds against us. We, keep going, keep moving. We keep moving, and then having a support system, a family support system, people in the community, once again, I want to just thank, the individuals who nominated me, that see my strength, see my work, and the tenacity that I have to keep moving forward in spite of the odds being against me. That keeps me going.
Thank you. I want to turn it over to Dr. Bambie because we haven't heard much from her. So what is your why, Dr. Bambie? Why do you do this work? And why do you think so many of us don't share our story?
Well, growing up in rural Southwest Georgia, I hear a lot of people talking about that they were poor and they didn't know that they were poor. Well, we knew that we were poor. And growing up in an era and raised by my maternal grandparents, especially by a maternal grandmother, I didn't meet my father until I was 26. And even though I knew my biological mother, she was raised up with us, with me and my older sister, more like a sister. So I really had to watch my grandmother take care of myself and my older sister working at a sewing factory, and I worked at that same sewing factory. My mother worked at that same sewing factory until it closed and went overseas. And so that's what really changed my trajectory in life, and to go back to school. And I went back to a technical college and continued my education. But I really say that I'm also a tourist as well. So there must be something in the water. But, I think a lot of people, especially women, Black women, don't share their stories for fear of ridicule. There may be some shame in that. But all the things that I have went through, and I don't have enough time in a day to go through all of those things. I had someone to tell me that said, Bambi, just stand in your truth. Just you have a powerful story to tell, and your story could be an inspiration for other Black girls from the country, from the rural South, that we too are somebody. Oftentimes I hear that people say that we are the least, the lost, and the left out. Well, we ain't the least, we ain't lost, but we're tired of being left out. So we have to tell our stories. We have to be bold and steadfast. And my grandmother, she only had a 10th grade education, but let me tell you, she didn't take no wooden nickels, as we say in the country. So she was very bold. She was very steadfast. We didn't have a lot of money, but I watched her share what little that we had. And so I grew up watching my grandmother share with other people, and people shared with us. And even though growing up I didn't have much, and even throughout my life I didn't have much, it was ingrained to me that these material things don't belong to you. They belong to your God or whoever you worship. And so you never know when you may be entertaining an angel. And so you need to try to help people in any way that you can. And so that's why I do this. Why? Because my grandparents was born in 1916 and 1922. So they come up in a time where they couldn't even vote. They come up a time when they were sharecropping, and they picked cotton. And these are the things that I learned from my maternal grandparents, and really pushed my older sister and I to get our education, to give back. And when we walk through a door, leave that door open for someone else to walk through.
Thank you, Dr. Bambi. Jennifer?
I'm still trying to figure my why out, if that's okay for me to be honest.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like I've never been food insecure really. Thank the Lord. Because I grew up even though we are not rich, have never ever been that, but we are family oriented. My family is the type of family that it don't matter who's coming, they're gonna ask you, are you hungry? Do you want some food? I could bring a new friend over to my house. They don't know this person, and they're still gonna ask, there's food there. Do you want to eat? Because it is a culture of cooking every meal, and that's how we grew up. No one was hungry. Anybody needed food, you can go to anybody's house and they have cooked enough for the whole family. Even now, it's just my mother and my niece and my dad in the house, and she cooks as if it's still 10 of us in the house. It's a blessing to have grown up with those values for me, particularly because when I saw that woman, when I was 19 years old, I was able to, something just like a light switch went off. I've always seen homelessness around, because I'm born and raised in Newark, and I've seen a lot, but I've never really experienced that interaction that I had with that woman. And I've never actually seen her till this day. I don't know if she's okay. I hope she is, but she has definitely changed my life. And when I say that, I mean that I was able to, I decided at 19 that day that I was going to do this religiously. And now we do it every other Sunday, and it's bigger than I would have ever thought. And that comes from power of team, of working together, and telling my story. Because when before I was about 4 years in of doing this consistently by myself, maybe my mom will make chicken or something to help me, but it was really just me, because I wasn't sharing it. I've always been a person that I don't like to take, like, I don't like to, you know, be in the credit of something. Like, I just want to do the work. But one of my mentors, Kalina Berryman, who I started to work under in college. I was a senior. She was like, no, you need to start posting this. Because, you know, it started to get expensive because it started to grow and grow and grow. So I'm like, I need, every time I would go, would be more people to feed. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, this food is expensive. And this is just coming from my little 21-year-old dollars and 22-year-old dollars. And it would become something that I would just do. So telling my story and posting more about what I was doing and letting my peers see what I was doing, it sparked something in them, like, hey, if Jen is doing this and we are the same age, why can I do this? So it began to spark interest in some of my peers, and they started to join the team. Well, we created a team, they started to join the team, and now we have a team where it's like clockwork. We know who bringing what. If not, we'll pick up the slack if somebody's out of town. You know, we are living our best lives. So if somebody's out of town or if someone's not here, we pick up the slack for one another. But it's really a beautiful team of young individuals. If I can quickly say who they are just amazing. And each one of us contribute. Most of us are women, and each one of the people on the co-founder side for NORCAN are all women. All 5 of us total, and 4 of us went to University High School. We all graduated together, all went to college, and are still trying to build resources and power. So it was really important, particularly to us, to continue to tell our story and share with everyone what we're doing, so that we are, especially on social media where most of our peers are, so that not only do they know what we're doing, but they can help and contribute and be inspired to do something similar or even better.
Yeah, that's great. I love the camaraderie. Rosie?
I'm going to claim my spot as a fellow Taurus. I
Wow,
am
great.
strong-willed. I have always been. And I share my story because I'm not what I've been through. And I want other people, especially my young sisters and brothers, to know that they can come through the storm successfully. I've been through sexual abuse, physical abuse, racism, homelessness. I didn't think myself poor growing up, but I remember not going on school trips because mom said she didn't have the money for it. So I've come a long way since that, and it's because I had support. So I want to be able to pay it forward and be that support for people who are going through the same thing. And I came through it all quietly. So in a sense, I had a life, I was fine. I have friends on the line who would not have known it was happening at the time. And I want to encourage people, tell your stories. There's an African proverb that says, until the lioness tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. So I encourage you, claim your place as the lion or the lioness and tell your story, share your stories. And, you know, having gone through that and seen the inequity that we now experience in our lives, the inequity has inspired me to keep going. I moved from an urban center to a suburban town, and the difference in how I was greeted as a parent in the schools was just striking. I thought I was in a different world. So I keep moving to help my brothers and sisters, young and not so young, to get to this equity, to get to all the things, to get to dignity if they have been abused or stripped of their dignity, so that we can all grow together. So I hope someone will be comforted or empowered or inspired when I tell my story.
Thank you, Rosie. Real quickly, before we go on, I do want to ask, what are some of the challenges that you all face on your journey? And how have you overcome those challenges?
I can start. I can
Okay.
start. So I mentioned prior that we are a group of young, very intelligent women. Some of us went to have our master's, PhD, working on PhD, and we are born, raised Brick City. So it's imperative for us to, you know, work with the city to keep the 18 through 33 population happy, because we are the next working generation. So we need to, you know, stay here, especially if we are born and raised here. It is imperative for us to stay here. And the way that the city is moving, it's not necessarily working towards us staying here. And I'm just being honest. So what we have put together is we're working on putting together a survey, a report that tells through different lenses, that tells the city what they need to do in certain aspects like nightlife, education, housing for our population in order for us to be happy and thriving here, not just surviving. And one of the challenges that we face, because we are all under 26, is that we're under 26 and they don't take us seriously when we are showing up wanting to collaborate or wanting, you know, having all these strategic planning. And they're like, well, you're 26. How can you have all these strategic plannings, instead of just thoroughly looking at what we have and it being actually good? So it's been difficult to, you know, maneuver through these spaces because the ageism is a thing. And I know we talked about this prior, but it really is a thing, and it's something that we're still fighting through. We're not discouraged or disappointed. We continue to pivot and move forward and do what we have to do to get this report done, because it's important to us and we want to stay here and we want to thrive here. We want to, you know, live our best lives and not just live paycheck to paycheck. We don't want to be our parents. We don't want to continue to live in that struggle. We went to school, we were educated, we're smart enough to be able to even want to do this amazing thing. But to be honest, what some of our struggles is being held back by ageism.
Thank you for sharing.
Yes, I can go
And
next.
I'm sorry, and we'll have a conversation, a very lively conversation about addressing the gap between those that are in the work and those that are coming up with the work, and how we can bridge that gap. But continue, Dr. Bambie.
Yes, some of the challenges that I see is unrestricted funding for this work, because there are some that pretend to be allies, but they're not really allies. They're foes, and they may disguise themselves as allies, and they may take the work and from those of us who are doing the work on the ground, from those grassroots residents. And so we sometimes call it poverty pimping. Excuse my bluntness, but it is what it is. And we see that that happens a lot. And so if you're going to write us in the grant, then you need to write us in the budget, in the words of Nathaniel Smith. And then oftentimes I do see the ageism. I'm kind of that that's kind of in between. Even though I'm 47, I have the mindset of Generation Z and the millennials, because I love young people. But you know, oftentimes I see that people don't value my lived experience like they value a PhD, like they value some professor. So even though I do have a PhD and also have a doctor of theology, that can't beat my lived experience. You can look at stats and read studies and do surveys all day long, but you don't know how it feels to not know where you're going to lay your head. Not only you, but with a newborn and 2 other children, where you have to decide if you're going to be homeless or you're going to leave your oldest son because the shelter say that he's too old to go with you, and you have to make that tough decision to say that we're going to be homeless and we're going to stay together. And so that's some of the challenges that I see, is the trust factor among the philanthropic community, and people need to value the lived experiences of those who have faced these challenges head on, as opposed to those quote unquote experts.
Thank you, Dr. Bambie. Munirah? You're on mute.
So, great, Dr. Bambie. We have a lot of things in common, all of us. So I would say, you know, the monopoly that's going on. It's like, it's like those who go along to get along, and then also I would say, being non-conforming, I am an out, you know, they say lesbian, so, non-conforming and also, I'm no holds bar, you know, I tell it like it is, straightforward, straight with no chaser, just real, and a lot of people, a lot of the powers that be, they don't like people that is straight shooters, tell it like it is, and that's where I see a lot of my stuff is hidden. And then the powers that be, you know, um, the forces of evil. So we living in a world where it's good versus evil right now, and the good gonna prevail, because we're gonna continue. So that's some of the challenges that I face, and also being formerly incarcerated. They look at that as being taboo for women, taboo, and they don't think people can change. I am here as a witness that going on 26 years out of incarceration. uh Ain't no stopping me now, and I'm doing everything in my powers. I got pulling my family, my brother who's doing awesome work in Paterson, all my brothers who are successful. I'm the only one who end up falling through the crack, but I came back to reach back and help my family and my community. That's not a place for us. So I came out a voice of change and a force to be reckoned. So I never give up. I continue to work, and I'm gonna keep on pushing, no matter who cares and who got anything to say about it.
Thank you, Munirah. Rosie?
I remember a time when my voice wasn't being heard when I was younger. So Jennifer, there's hope. I was at a table, just new to organizing, parent and member of the community, and we would be brainstorming around an organizing strategy or issue. And I would say something, I put it out there and no response. And then one of the elders, and there were two in particular, two gentlemen, would say, why don't we do that? And say exactly what I just said, and it would be received and welcomed. And then it was their idea, not mine. And I have to say that was frustrating. And eventually I had a blow up with one and we parted ways. we just like agreed not to agree. But with the other, who was a strong African-American man, I asked him for a sit down and we talked. And I said, this is how I perceive what happens. And he was surprised and welcomed my input and said he didn't realize that was happening. You could call it mansplaining or ageism. I was in my 20s at the time, but he accepted that. And I can't say he immediately changed, but I did see a conscious effort to hear other voices. And it wasn't just mine, but it was the very few young Black women that were in the group.
Wow. So Rosie has transitioned us to, and you all saw the question about, hidden voices. There was an article that was shared internally about Black and Brown women being hidden forces in community development or in their communities. And so, looking at the poll, I see that majority of the attendees here feel as though your voices are hidden in the work that you're doing in your community. And so I'd like to ask the panelists, and you already heard from Rosie, what have you done to overcome being hidden? And how do you push through that feeling of, wow, they want to kibosh me, they want to shut me down? How do you push through that?
So I want to add a little piece to that, Shalom.
Sure.
And I want to give props to my team of 5 women. I'm one of the 5, who are some powerful women. And we do our work quietly. And sometimes we're like leading from behind. But when it's time for us to step up, we step up, because we're not stepping up for ourselves. We're stepping up for the kids that we serve. And that's what helps me when my voice is hidden, is to remember that it's not about me or us. It's about the children who need our voices.
Thank you. Dr.
I
Bean?
can go next to that.
Oh,
Oh, okay. I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's
Go
all
ahead,
right.
Jennifer.
Dr. Bambi could go first.
No, go ahead.
I'm very shy. I really am. And I have imposter syndrome to the core. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that I have, and it's just something that I grew up in, because I've always been excellent. And sometimes when you're in spaces where people aren't excellent, sometimes you're in the wrong spaces, I say, they try to knock you down. And luckily I'm in great spaces now, but I do suffer from imposter syndrome very bad sometimes. But I have a beautiful team of women, and 2 guys, but most of us are women, where we're constantly reminding one another of how, if it weren't for us, we would not be doing this amazing work. And we have inspired other groups to even want to do certain work. Particularly my group of girls, like, they're very well in partnerships and acquisitions. And when I mean, we have gotten Panera Bread, a partnership with Panera Bread, a partnership with Krispy Kreme throughout, because of these amazing women, and just other partnerships that I have created in the past 3 years since they've joined the team. Literally, I truly believe that we could not be doing this amazing work had it not been at the front line of these women, who are constantly, whether they get praise or not, they're constantly, making sure that this team is working with everything that goes on. It's just amazing for me, and I really had to say that it's important for us to be surrounded by people who sometimes see us more than we see ourselves, and particularly that's usually always women.
Thank you. Dr. Bambi?
Yes, and that is the precise reason why I see one of my colleagues, Sherelle Bird, and that consists of 3 dynamic women, 1 dynamic gentleman, formed Alliance 85, was to create our seat at the table. And so what I have found was just showing up. I would show up at everything. If there was a hearing at the Georgia State Capitol, I was there, because guess what? You can't hide it from me, because that's public information. And the Georgia state capitol is the people's house. The U.S. Capitol is the people's house. So that's my house. So I'm going to go there when I get ready, and I'm going to talk to who I want to talk to. And even though when I first started, some people said, hey, well, you're not a lobbyist. Well, guess what? I went and paid my $20 and became a lobbyist. So you're not going to shut me up. You're gonna listen to me, and not only you're going to listen to me, but I'm going to bring my people in here with those lived experience, because you're making these policies and not getting the input from those who have been through nothing, been through these challenges as relates to affordable housing and equitable community development and voting. And so showing up over and over and over again, and believe it or not, I am actually an introvert. I know you probably can't tell, but I'm actually an introvert. But I really gained my strength to speak up from my grandmother, because she wasn't afraid of anything. Like I said, she was born in 1922, and she was a dynamic person. God bless her soul. So I really rely on her strength. And I also, think about the things that my mother went through, who is a Vietnam era veteran. So a Black woman joining the Army in the 1970s, and the challenges that she went through to seek a better life for her 2 girls that she had at the time. So I had to find that courage and that strength from my ancestors, who were stripped from their country in Nigeria, and brought over here to toil and work in a country that didn't give a flying flip about them. And so, you know, one of the things, the stuff that I said, my mother and I, we talk about this all the time, is that Black people are the most patriotic people in the world because we cared more about a country that didn't care about us. And so that gives me the voice to speak when I'm speaking to these elected officials, when I'm speaking to these people, and also challenging some of my quote unquote allies on things that they say, because they have not been there. They're looking at it from a lens of privilege and not from a lens of experience. And someone has to speak out. And I know I'm a Southern Baptist, so instead of saying why me, why not me? And so I feel that I was placed in this position for a purpose, not only to elevate. It's not about me, but elevating my people. When I say my people, women, Black women, women of color, all of us who have had those lived experiences and who have been through a lot, like I said before, leaving that door open.
Thank you, Dr. Bambie. And Munirah, I'm going to start with you, but I want to transition us on because I want to be mindful of time. And so I want to have this conversation about women and how we create space for women like us in our work. I'd like to know how you're doing that. And then I want us to have a conversation, and Jennifer brought it up earlier, about ageism. How can we bridge the gap between those that have been in this work for a good period of time, and you have the younger generation coming up? How do we do better in bridging that gap? Jennifer, you want to start us off? No? Munirah?
So we on this topic. So how do we bridge the gap? First of all, it shouldn't be a gap, you know, because every man, woman, and child need to be on the ground, you know, taught survival to the fullest. So we shouldn't even have a gap. So why do we have a gap? So we have a gap because that's what, you know, society has placed for us, you know. And I always say, to when I have the opportunity to build with younger generations, younger individuals, you know, I tell them, you gotta take your power, just like we have to take our power. You know, we have to come and bring our seat or bring our table, you know. And that's what the young generation have to do. And then it's our duty as, you know, the elders, the, you know, individuals who are of age. We are to prepare a place for our young generation. It is our duty and responsibility to pass it on, you know, create safe haven, create opportunities. That's why we in it. Our future generation, for those who have children, nieces, nephews. You know, I don't have any children, but I want to leave a legacy for my young nieces and nephews, you know, and the young generation. So I'm building a sisterhood. I'm a part of a sisterhood, you know, advocacy by the sound of my voice. I want to lead by example. I want to help anyway, consult, you know, show you through my experience, you know, and in terms of building. At the end of the day, we shouldn't have this gap. You know, we shouldn't have this gap, and we should, as adults, I mean, we should, children, no matter who they are, you know, we should be leading by example and then showing them and looking at individuals, not even if they're not our children. You know, it's our responsibility to, we are the mothers of all our children. Period.
Thank you, Munirah.
Oh.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I can go. It's funny, Miss Bunami, right? Is your last name? Am I saying that
Yeah,
correctly?
El-Bomani.
It's funny because last week
El-Bomani.
I had you know, I had a lot to say, and then Thursday night I did a panel with Larry Ham, and I learned that power, unfortunately, is never given; it's always taken. So my response is going to be a little bit on the radical side, and you have to just take power these days. What would be ideal is if older generation and younger generation gave each other grace, had patience for one another. What I mean by patience is us younger having patience with and grace with knowing that the advice comes from love and not harm, and also lived experience, but also the elders to know, or the seasoned to know that how we respond to it is based on the same way that most did. Is we have to also live our own experiences, and having that grace so that we we'll listen and take what we need with a grain of salt, but also we have to live our own experiences. And I think a lot of time are seasoned, because they are seasoned and they know what can come from left and right. They forget that we also have to live our own lives, and we have different times and different resources. And I think that there's a lack of grace and understanding that. But I also unfortunately, the world we are living in is not that cut and clear. And what we have to do sometimes is, or most times, is take power. If you want power, learn, because they're not going to pass the baton. So learn from who you want to learn from, observe people, view people, learn, and take power.
Thank you, Jennifer. Rosie?
I think it's our responsibility to raise up the next generation of leaders. And we have to start in our homes. This thing in our history about children are to be seen or not heard, or leave the room because we're having an adult conversation, we need to stop. We need to let our kids experience these conversations, the struggle, and raise them up as leaders. And then even beyond our homes, mentor somebody. We should be mentoring, and we're talking about women here, especially, we should be mentoring our young girls. However, in mentoring them, make sure you're not just throwing knowledge at them. Have interactions, have dialogue, hear them and respect their opinion, and give them some decision-making power as well. So I think those are the things that we have to do to make sure that we're making space for other women and the next generation as we move through this.
Thank you, Rosie. So we have one question in the audience, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Bambie, because we are cutting short on time. But the question is, how do you continue to build your network platform in your chosen arena and establish yourself within your community? Dr. Bambie, you want to take that one?
Yes, I'll be glad to take that one. Networking and collaboration is so important. And I think it is important to not just, as I do at Georgia Act, not just collaborate with those who are in the housing arena or community development, but also networking and collaborating with the school systems, with young people, with those entities that may not be traditionally related to housing, but also doing voter engagement work. So it's important to network and collaborate together, because as someone said in the chat, we're not competition. We're here to complement each other, so we can build off each other's strengths. And I think it's important as you go into the communities, as I have into Georgia, don't just come and get information, do listening sessions, and then leave. It's important that as you go into these communities or in your neighborhoods, that you give something back to the community, that you give something back to the people, and you keep coming back, and you build that trust with people to show that you're really not just using them for your own purpose, but to help build that power, especially with young people, because as I say, with a lot of older people, look, you're going to die and try to take this knowledge with you. What sense does that make? Even with my youngest son, I take him with me everywhere. He went to the U.S. Capitol last week. He was waving signs for Black Voters Matter when he was 6 and 7 years old. So it's so important that you continue to go in those communities, but don't just take, but also give back.
Thank you, Dr. Bambie. Does anyone have anything left to add? 30 seconds.
just thank you.
You have the power. The people closest to the problem have to be a part of the solution, and that's us.
Mm.
True.
Thank you all. I hope that today that you all had an opportunity to vibe with one another, to be encouraged, to be inspired, and to also know that your story deserves to be told. And you can start in your home, in your neighborhood, and in your workplace. It doesn't matter, just start somewhere, because that is the very thing that will provide social change for us. And so thank you. Know that your story is your power. Thank you all for attending today. Thank you, Dr. Bambie. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Munirah. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you all. Thank you
If
all.
you all have an opportunity,
Thank you.
please check out our series, Women of Color on the Front Lines. And thank you. Until next time.